What's up? You're listening to The Long Game, and I'm your host, David Lee Kim, co-founder of Omniscient Digital. In this episode, we chat with Sandy Mangat. Sandy is the head of marketing at Pocus, a revenue data platform that makes it easy for go-to-market teams to analyze, visualize, and action data about their prospects and customers. She's a go-to-market expert specializing in product-led motions, and prior to joining Pocus, she's held various marketing and growth leadership roles at venture-backed startups, scale-ups, and Fortune 500 companies. In this conversation, we talk about how Sandy's background in product marketing ultimately set her up for this role at Pocus, creating a new category and educating the market about product-led sales. She talks about the various plays they ran to educate the market and build a cult following. This included AMAs, a Slack community, and of course, branded apparel. The industry has changed a lot since Pocus's inception. Customers use the product in new and novel ways that they hadn't planned for, and people talk about product-led sales much differently now. Sandy shares how their positioning has to shift to meet the market where it is, and the nature of product marketing being an iterative process. I think you're going to learn a lot in this conversation. Here's my chat with Sandy Mangat. Sandy, welcome to The Long Game.
David, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad we finally made this happen. It took a couple months, I think, of rescheduling and all of that with the summer, but I'm glad we're here today.
Sorry about that.
No worries at all. I'm glad we're here. So I want to start maybe at the beginning of your marketing career. We won't spend a lot of time there, but I found something really interesting about your background because you got your marketing chops starting out in product marketing based on what I see on your LinkedIn profile. And I just had another VP of marketing on the pod, Trinity from User Gems, who also had a background in product marketing. And we were talking about how nebulous that role can be. So to think that that was like your first role, like how did you end up in that position? And what was it like trying to figure out what the hell you were doing, I guess?
Yeah, so fun story. The first ever startup job I had, I started at the kind of, bottom of the marketing food chain as marketing specialist. Just meant I was a generalist. I did all of the work that nobody else wanted to do, like editing blogs, uploading them to WordPress. And very quickly, I got involved in slightly more product marketing related tasks. And that was the first thing I did was probably a competitive analysis. And I got super nerdy about it. Like, I think I put together like a 60-page PowerPoint or something like that. I got so deep into all of our competitors. I did some like next level stalking of their products. I spent a lot of time in our products wiki pages, and I just really was super interested in how the product actually worked. And our VP of marketing took note of this, and he had a product marketing background. And so he approached me and said, "Have you heard of product marketing?" And I was like, "No, never heard of it. What is that?" And he said, "Product marketing sits at the intersection of marketing and product, and your job is really to learn everything about the product and then figure out how to take that product to market." You think about who is the ideal persona, you think about messaging, and really you become like this translator between what the engineering team and the product team are doing and what the marketing team is doing. And I thought, that sounds great. I love the product. I love learning about the product. I get to spend more time with the product team. I get to do more like stalking of our competitors and do competitive analysis. And so that was how I got into product marketing. 6 months into my role as marketing specialist, just my curiosity about the product led me down this product marketing path.
Yeah, tell me more about that process of like, I guess, competitive analysis. And I'm asking because I'm wondering, was this just something that naturally came to you of, oh, of course I'm going to go do this research on competitors and put together these materials and find this information? Or what was the level of guidance, or did you just like do what you felt was the right thing to do and it was actually like quite impressive?
I can't take all the credit here. So the VP of marketing at this company, Franco Castaldini, I credit him for giving me an understanding of what the foundation of product marketing is. And specifically, he gave me a lot of guidance of how I should think about competitive analysis. One of the things that Franco really helped me understand was we're not just trying to do like a surface level understanding of these companies and their products, but we're really trying to understand their strengths, their weaknesses, their motivators. And, he pointed me towards all the right resources like Gartner. We had a Gartner license. Mm-hmm. He said, go and read, every Gartner Magic Quadrant and market guide that you can find about this. And then, he also encouraged me to go and read what those companies were kind of telegraphing in their own content. So I had some kind of guidance on how to do it. I just went, to the next level of stalking on these companies. And that's why, the 60-page PowerPoint deck was born. And I actually had the opportunity to then present that to our sales team. And I'm sure they were like, who is this keen newbie and why is she bombarding us with these facts about competitors? But I think it ended up being pretty helpful.
Yeah. And I love that story of just maybe there's some eagerness to prove yourself or being a little bit naive about like all the stuff that you can put together and share and be like, look at all the things that we could be doing. But it sounds like you kind of got a masterclass in product marketing, like right out the gate, which is, I don't think everyone can say they get that experience with their first manager. So that's amazing to hear.
I've always said, I think I've been extremely fortunate in the managers I've had over the years that, I fully credit my career to. So Franco and a woman called Karen, they were my first foray into startup marketing, and both of them like really shaped how I think about marketing in general. Karen definitely taught me a lot about brand. Franco taught me all of the basics of product marketing. And more than that, I think being given opportunities to stretch what I knew and step outside of my comfort zone is what they gave me. When you're at a startup, you lack resources. And so you end up stepping into roles that you're probably not ready for. And you probably would not have been given if you were at a larger company. So working at a small startup, I think, has been an accelerant to my career.
Yeah, I feel like either the person steps up and is eager, or they're like, nope, this isn't for me. And I think maybe we're similar where we're like, oh yeah, like, give me more. I'm gonna figure this all out.
Yeah, I think people who end up working in startups, and especially if your entire LinkedIn profile looks like you just go from startup to startup, it's a very specific type of person, and it requires a specific type of skill set, and you can't be afraid of doing things that are unknown.
Yeah. So you went from marketing specialist to product marketing in 6 months. And if we kind of fast forward a little bit, now you're head of marketing at Pocus, which is a revenue data platform. We'll talk a lot more about the various programs that you've run there. But what were the series of events that led you to Pocus?
Yeah. So I've spent most of my career prior to Pocus in mostly sales-led companies doing first product marketing and then stepping into a head of marketing role. I would say the turning point was the last company I worked for before Pocus was actually a very different go-to-market. So I went from mainly your traditional enterprise software sale to bottoms-up PLG. This was a generative AI startup, and PLG was the name of the game. You got to get a ton of users. You got to get a ton of data. So when I joined this company, I joined as head of marketing and growth. So I was tasked with really building out this PLG motion, which was brand new to me. So I learned a lot about PLG through that experience. But more than that, what I really started to feel was the pain of trying to have both a bottoms-up motion and a traditional sales team and using the existing go-to-market tech stack. So I was getting pretty frustrated with having HubSpot and Mixpanel and Segment and all of these tools that weren't necessarily talking to each other in the way that I wanted them to. And it was making it extremely difficult for me to run the types of playbooks I wanted to run. Having extremely data-driven and specifically product data-driven playbooks was proving super difficult with the existing tech stack. And I started writing about that. So I would share my experiences and my frustrations on LinkedIn. And that's actually how Alexa, the CEO of Pocus, discovered me on LinkedIn. So one of my posts must have made it into her feed. She commented, we started DMing, and the rest is history. But so my discovery of Pocus was really because I felt the pain that we solve.
Yeah, everything you said about the tech stack resonated like to my bones. I was like, oh yeah, I definitely know those pains of trying to figure all that out and getting people to use the right data and everything. And the second thing is, I feel like LinkedIn has been, as much crap there is on LinkedIn, it's actually been a great way to meet people. Like I say I make LinkedIn friends, and some of them I've met in person, which is really cool. Like I tell my girlfriend I'm getting lunch with a LinkedIn friend. She's like, what do you mean a LinkedIn friend? I'm like, I only know them through LinkedIn. I love it. It's a great community.
Yeah. How far we've come from like the 90s where it was stranger danger, don't meet anyone you meet on the internet. And now it's basically, my entire social network is from the internet.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and it comes full circle because I remember when I was like a teenager, like middle school, high school, I was on AOL, AIM, messaging, like talking to strangers. And looking back, I realized how strange that was, but there were like some real friendships. Like didn't know what they looked like, didn't know where they live, didn't know what their real name was, but we're just buddies.
Yeah, it's like, flying fella 1, 2, 3, 4, my best friend who I've never met. Yeah, I love to say this. I call it algorithmic magic. So like LinkedIn's algorithmic magic is what connected me to Pocus. So I probably owe them a check at some point.
Yeah. Algos can be a force for good.
Yeah, sometimes.
So I think maybe let's talk about Pocus, because y'all did something really interesting, right? When y'all were founded, there was product-led growth that was pretty hype at the time. I'd say it's kind of maybe died down a little bit with the current market and everything, or at least the way people were thinking about it is no longer really the most efficient way to grow. But during that time, you branched off and started like product-led sales. And I remember hearing that phrase and thinking, wait, we've been doing this already at HubSpot for years. But you just never called it product-led sales. So it was fascinating that you created a label for what was already happening and what was needed. And I'd say you kind of created a category. Like, how did you think about that? Was that intentional, or was it just like, oh yeah, we call that product-led sales, and someone was like, you should coin that? Like, how was that conversation?
Yeah, I can't take credit for that. That was definitely Alexa and Isaac. Before they started Pocus, they did, hundreds of user interviews with go-to-market leaders at various companies, and they learned a ton from those conversations. And then there was this consistent theme that they were hearing, which is we are bottoms up, we've got a PLG motion, we're also doing sales. Trying to bring those two things together is a nightmare, specifically trying to get data out of the data warehouse and enable the sales team on it is, an extremely challenging task. And so throughout those conversations, at some point, they started using the term product-led sales to describe this motion. And I think at first, people looked at Alexa like, what do you mean? What is that? And then, she would describe it and they would have a similar reaction to what you had, which is, oh yeah, we've been doing that. We've been trying to do that. I think there's a real power in naming things and branding things. We take that to the next level at Pocus, where we love to brand internal projects for that reason. Because I think you need something people can rally around in order to have momentum and move things forward. For example, internally right now, we have a project that we call Project Sadness. The acronym, sales are dope, never ever stop selling. And this is our internal project. We're rallying the go-to-market team around defining our playbook for how we do outbound. And it's been super powerful to have that brand around this, and everyone's, chiming in the channel, kind of, running with this whole Project Sadness theme and you just like are yelling Project Sadness at each other, it's galvanizing. And I think product-led sales and category creation, same thing. We needed to name it and we needed to kind of create the boundary around it of what this thing is, and then we needed to galvanize a community around it. And so this was a real intentional decision made by Alexa and Isaac. And when I joined, that was my North Star on my onboarding doc. It was the kind of like number one thing that I was tasked with: figure out how to create a category, figure out how to build a community around product-led sales.
Yeah, and surely you're doing some sort of partnership with Corporate Bro, right?
Yeah. We love Corp.
Yeah, what is it? I think I saw your LinkedIn post, like data-driven sadness. Maybe the two Ds are silent.
Yeah, data-driven. Athletic nerd is the kind of concept. Can't take credit for athletic nerd. Sam Werboff at Airtable coined it at a dinner that we hosted, and I just loved that way of describing the modern seller. So someone who's data-driven, still has like that sales kind of athleticism and competitive drive, but this new breed of salesperson is a nerd. They love data. They want to use data to do their job. So the athletic nerd.
Yeah, I think I saw a T-shirt. Are those like publicly available for sale or what?
Not yet, but stay tuned. They might be coming. There might be a merch drop coming soon.
Okay, merch drop. Got it. Is there a wait list that we should be aware of?
Not yet, but I'll let you know when that goes live.
Yeah, I've seen some LinkedIn posts about like merch that y'all have been like sending to folks, and I'm like, that looks pretty cool. I would rock that.
Yeah,
so we'll keep an eye out.
The bucket hat is prolific. Talk about like low lift, extremely valuable marketing. Just some really well-timed, well-placed merch. At one point, half of kind of like the Stanford campus was rocking these Pocus bucket hats because Alexa and Isaac went back and did a talk on how they built Pocus for some folks in the MBA program. And then they gave out the bucket hat. And then next thing you know, Stanford is like littered with Pocus bucket hats. It's actually one of my favorite things to hear about is the random Pocus merch sighting. I think one of our team saw somebody on a bus wearing a Pocus bucket hat. A random playground in Nashville, a woman came up to somebody on our team and was like, "Is that Pocus? Do you work at Pocus?" Those are like amazing moments as a marketer, because then you know you're doing your job.
Yeah, it's amazing because Pocus is relatively small compared to like all these larger companies that like HubSpot gave away free swag. HubSpot gave away so much free swag. I gave that away because I didn't want any of it. So I'm sure there's just random people wearing HubSpot branded stuff, but for Pocus being, I think you're under 100 team members, right?
Yeah, so we're really small. So that's why it's even more special. And and I think that goes to the category creation, kind of like how to create a bit of a cult following, where we're like that indie band that people are super proud to know. And they're like, I knew Pocus before it went mainstream.
All right, so you have an EP coming out as well. Got it.
Yeah. So all of my marketing tactics, I just steal from other industries, like influencers and the music industry. I think they've got it figured out better than B2B.
Oh, 100%. I love seeing a crossover of tactics and strategies because people are always like, oh yeah, we want someone with B2B experience. And I'm like, there's a ton you can learn from B2C, and maybe like not everything translates over, but B2B marketing could use a little shaking up and more excitement around it. Yeah.
That's why we had a bit of fun with the Pocus brand, really leaning into the magic. Because why not? Why not? We're all humans. Just because we are selling to businesses doesn't mean we're not selling to humans.
Yeah. So I want to get into this differentiation or its evolution from product-led growth to product-led sales. It sounds like once you started using that label, it was pretty easy for people to understand because it was already something they were doing. How would you describe like why it evolved to that point?
Yeah, I think there's maybe 1% of companies out there that can really be truly product-led growth, which is there are no humans involved. There is just a product. The product does the acquisition, it does the conversion, it does the expansion, it does everything. I think there's really truly only 1% of companies can be exactly that. The reason is most products have some level of complexity. It's not always very clear how to get the most value out of it. And so it's just unfeasible to be completely product-led. And we did a survey. We've been doing a product-led sales benchmark survey for the last couple of years. And the results of that survey back that up, where 97% of respondents told us that they either already have a sales team, are planning to add a sales team. And there was like 3% of folks who responded that they have no plans to hire a sales team and that they are fully in on product-led growth. So I think,
Wow.
Just the nature of the products that are in market, the types of solutions, types of problems that people are trying to solve are complex enough that you need a sales team and you need to have humans in the loop and you need to assist your product-led signups into getting the maximum amount of value. And especially as you start to think about enterprise-level contracts, there's a gap between individual usage and enterprise-level value. And that gap is really being able to tell the story of how individual usage translates into broad enterprise ROI. And that gap can only really be filled by humans who can do that connecting of the dots and the storytelling. Now, we want to make those humans' lives easier, which is why tools like Pocus exist to help them uncover those pockets of really interesting usage, give them the data that they need to go and tell that story. But you still need the humans in the loop to do the actual storytelling.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And I guess going back to your point on getting a bit of a cult following and creating this category and getting more people talking about it, when I think of Pocus, I think about your AMA series. I think about the Slack community that you and the team created. How did those things come to be? Like, what was the thinking behind them? How did you measure success? There's a lot wrapped up in those multiple questions, so I'll let you tackle that how you'd like. But I think you became really well known for those.
Yeah, and again, credit to Alexa on this. What she and Isaac realized when they were having those user interview conversations is there was a real need to have a place where people could discuss ideas, cross-pollinate ideas, because despite the fact that people had been doing it for a while in their own companies, no one was really talking about it kind of with their peers. And there certainly were no best practices. There were no frameworks that were publicly available. And so the reason the community was created was out of a need, a problem to solve, which was the go-to-market leaders that they were talking to said, I need to talk to so-and-so at Dropbox. I would love to talk to so-and-so at Atlassian. I love what they're doing from a product-led sales perspective. Can you connect me? And so rather than trying to facilitate all those individual connections, Alexa and Isaac thought we should try creating a community. Let's just put 20 of our most engaged user interviewees into a Slack community and facilitate that conversation and that connection. And it just kind of snowballed from there. I like to tell people that that should be your motivation for building a community. You shouldn't build a community just for community's sake. You should be really trying to solve a problem. And so in Pocus's case, there was a problem to solve. And our goal in solving that problem was to connect go-to-market leaders so that they could share their product-led sales expertise. And it was also to kind of add value to folks who were just starting out thinking about product-led sales. And that's how the AMAs were born as well. So all these folks that we were talking to had immense knowledge, really amazing advice that they could give. And so we wanted to create an informal setting for them to share that advice with our community and really make it the community's time to ask whatever their burning questions were. And now it's, a long-standing program that we have for the community that people really love. And the added benefit for us as a marketing team is that we get incredible content. And we get to elevate the voices of these experts who have been there and done that, as opposed to, pontificating from our ivory tower of Pocus thinks this. But why would we do that when we have all these amazing experts in our community?
Yeah, what I loved about the AMAs, I attended more of them earlier on when you were getting started, not so much recently, but I remember the feeling I got of those AMAs was what I would get going to conferences. And when I go to conferences, I don't go to any of the stage talks. You can find that information online. I'm hanging out at the bar and talking to people who are attending and getting their behind the scenes of hey, what's working for you? What are you trying out? What's not working for you? And stuff that they wouldn't really share in public like that. But these AMAs, they're sharing the raw behind the scenes type of stuff of what was happening, what wasn't working. I was it was kind of playing inside baseball, but with a group of people versus just one-on-one at a conference. And it feels like that was probably an accelerator for so many people's careers, just getting so much of that knowledge from other companies versus having to wait to go to a conference or something, or waiting to get an intro.
Yeah, exactly. When I think about the community's value proposition, it's the ungoogleable stuff. It's the stuff that you cannot ask ChatGPT. This is knowledge that people are sharing, and in its unvarnished format, you won't find it anywhere else.
Yeah. So we've talked about product-led sales, and before this, before we started recording, you were talking about how Pocus is becoming a bit more than supporting product-led sales and more of a revenue data platform, and that's how I referred to it earlier. Tell us more about that evolution, what's happening that's kind of leading to this change.
Yeah, I think it's a really important point that as a go-to-market leader, head of marketing, someone who's really thinking about positioning, that it's not a set and forget that you do it one time. You build a category once and then there's no iteration. You always have to continuously kind of battle test your positioning and make sure that it still makes sense in today's market. As well as also thinking about your long-term vision as a company and how your positioning is going to evolve and serve that long-term vision. So there's been we're in year 2.5 of product-led sales as a category, as a market. It's been a year and a half since Gartner officially added it to their CRM hype cycle. So it's still early days, but we're already starting to see a lot of shifts in how companies are positioning themselves in this market. There's been some companies that are focusing more on the lead scoring aspect of product-led sales, and there are other folks that are focusing more on the workflow aspect of orchestrating downstream actions from things like PQL scores. And then there's a couple of players like Pocus that are focused more on a broader platform play, where it's really orchestrating the entire go-to-market strategy of a company potentially. And so when we were thinking about our long-term vision at Pocus, which is not just really to serve PLG companies, but to really think about all SaaS businesses and all businesses that have data, our goal is to make it easier for non-technical users to get access to really robust technical data without having to put in any engineering resources or having to code. So that's our long-term vision. And when we think about the term product-led sales platform, it tells you something very specific about what we do today. And so as we were thinking about that and this category that we built, we realized that we need to start broadening our scope. And it wasn't really driven just because we felt we needed to better articulate our long-term vision. It was really driven by our customers who were starting to use Pocus in ways that we did not intend. So our primary use case is product-led sales, and what you would think when you think product-led sales is playbooks around free to paid conversion and enabling the sales assist team with PQLs. But we were starting to see folks using Pocus in ways that kind of stretch that definition. So customer success teams were starting to use Pocus, marketing teams were starting to use Pocus, and it really started to become a source of truth for go-to-market teams and how they thought about their data and orchestrating playbooks across multiple teams. And really being very critical to their pipeline generating activities. And so customers were coming to us and saying, I don't even think of Pocus as a PLS tool. I think of you guys as, my pipeline generation cockpit, or I think of you guys as, the kind of revenue engine for my company. And so when you start to hear that from your customers, you start to realize, maybe we need to broaden this definition sooner. Maybe we need to rethink our positioning sooner than we had intended. So it was really a pull from our customers, kind of forcing us to think about our positioning. And that's how we landed on the revenue data platform. We actually talked to a bunch of our customers and ideated with them, which was a really fun experience. And I think we've set ourselves up in a really great way for the current shifting dynamics in the market, where a lot of companies are deprioritizing things that they perceive to be, PLG or PLS tools, because their focus is on pipeline, their focus is on revenue. And so just a simple kind of shift in how we name our product and how we position our product allows us to continue to be successful and ride the wave, as opposed to getting pigeonholed into this like narrow category of tools that maybe some folks are starting to deprioritize.
Okay, there are a couple of different directions we can go here. I'm going to try to go down both. So one, down the line, I want to revisit like what it means to enable entire go-to-market teams than just like the sales team. But you mentioned something really interesting with more companies now focusing on pipeline and revenue and ultimately like making sure all activities align to that. What were the types of things that they were deprioritizing? And I ask this because I wonder if some listeners at these types of companies might hear what you're about to share and be like, oh, actually, maybe we should also cut that out of what we're doing. So can you share some examples?
Yeah, and I think it's very specific, to each business, what they were deprioritizing. Because as you know, like the nature of a PLG business is that it's so driven by how the product functions and the specifics of what that product is. And so it doesn't neatly translate into something kind of generic that I can tell you across all of those companies. But what they were seriously looking at was, where do we have the highest points of leverage right now? And a lot of folks were identifying kind of moving up market as a big point of leverage for their organizations, and less so thinking about kind of optimizing their like SMB motions. So the purely product-led motions. And I think part of that is the product-led motion had matured to a point where it's kind of something you can kind of have always on, set and forget to a certain extent. And so I think there was just more attention and more energy being paid to that, bridging the gap between the SMBs and the enterprise motion, or solely focusing on that enterprise motion. But it's so different how that manifests. Like, I can't name a single playbook or a tactic that people were deprioritizing.
Yeah. Could you share like maybe an example without saying who it was, maybe, of what it looks like to use Pocus to support more of the enterprise go-to-market motions?
One of the most challenging motions to run in a PLG company is going from that individual usage at like a team or workspace level to the enterprise contract. Oftentimes it's because your decision makers are not actually the ones that are using the product. And so those folks are not using the product day to day, but their teams are using it. So you've got all this data about this incredible account. They're using the product every day. There's a ton of great usage. But your decision maker for the enterprise level contract is not using the product. So how do you equip your sales team with the data that they need in order to go and have the conversation with that enterprise decision maker? So it's not enough to say this is a excellent PQL or excellent PQA. You need to have a lot of data to back up why this person, who probably doesn't actually care about this tool at all, why should they care to have a conversation with you about this usage? Why should they bother to upgrade to an enterprise license? What is the benefit to them? So being able to have this robust data in Pocus gives them everything that they need in one place to go and have that conversation. And, literally being able to take screenshots of what you have in Pocus and sending it to that decision maker and saying, did you know that this is the kind of usage that we're seeing? And by the way, you're hitting the limits of this plan. If you were to upgrade, you unlock these security benefits, you unlock X, Y, and Z. So that's just one basic example of how folks are using Pocus to bridge that gap between the PLG, PLS motion and kind of like an enterprise sales motion.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And I guess maybe expanding to more of the go-to-market team, that sounded like a pretty sales-focused use case. You mentioned now wanting to expand scope and supporting client success or customer success and marketing teams. What does that now start looking like? How are folks using their platform right now?
For customer success, it's really about staying on top of, the being more proactive in engaging with accounts in a more prioritized way. So having this data that tells you not just a red, yellow, green, but you have all this additional data and signal to tell you should be reaching out to this account because their usage has fallen off of a cliff and they're probably at risk of churn. Or it's telling you proactive signals of potential growth and expansion. There's a ton of white space here that you have not tackled from a seat utilization perspective. So all of these more granular insights are super helpful to customer success teams. I think the added benefit, though, is that sales and customer success would then be using the same source of truth. Oftentimes, CS teams are using Gainsight or some other tool, and then sales teams are using Salesforce or HubSpot, and they're not usually talking to each other using the same language. What Pocus allows these teams to do is talk the same language and have the same ground truth of what an account looks like. And so it makes the conversations and the handoffs when you're dealing with an expansion opportunity that much easier. And, from a CS perspective, what we've heard is it's just a more delightful experience to use Pocus for some of these playbooks, especially because then they can use the same type of playbook that sales is already running. It's just they're looking at it from a slightly different lens, which just makes everyone's life easier. From a marketing perspective, it's about using the same data that sales is using to prioritize their PQLs and PQAs, using that data to power downstream workflows in HubSpot or whatever marketing automation tool they're using. That's definitely an area where we're thinking a lot about. We're thinking about that marketing persona a little bit more. How can we better enable them other than just giving them all of this robust data?
Yeah, as you're speaking about all this, it all makes sense. And I'm getting flashbacks of going into Amplitude and pulling these reports and doing the analysis and sending the data over to my sales team and stuff. And it makes me happy to hear that there's now a product like this, but I'm just I can't believe we're just hacking together all this stuff to get by before.
Yeah, it was painful. I used to have to do that with Mixpanel. It was just so painful.
So we've been talking about the evolution of product-led growth to product-led sales and how Pocus has now evolved to more of a larger like revenue data platform. I want to shift gears and talk about how you've evolved a bit as a marketer, because you've been at startups, like they move fast. Even in a couple of years with Pocus, the market's changed, the industry has changed. Like competitors are like similar companies are shutting down. There's a lot of things changing. So I'd love to hear how you've evolved and like change your approach to your job and role as the company has grown and all these changes have occurred.
Yeah. I think in the first year, my job was very much being the chief evangelist in many ways for product-led sales, and trying to really, my main focus was building a category, trying to create as much high-value content as possible, and just really educating the market on what it is to be what it is to do a product-led sales motion. I think the shift has been from, creating that kind of cult following into how do we turn cult following into revenue for our company? Mm-hmm. So as a marketer, my focus has shifted from, brand and category to more specifically thinking about pipe generation and how do I best enable the sales team. And I think this is pretty typical for a startup growth story. The first year is in pursuit of product market fit. So as a marketer, my goal is also to help in that pursuit. And as the company's goals shift towards revenue, my goals have to shift towards revenue. And I think one of the things that has really shifted in how I think about planning for marketing has been really aligning myself to pipeline generation goals, as opposed to before it was really hype and awareness and category creation, things that are hard to quantify. And so marketing's goals have become more quantifiable. So as the leader of this team, I have to really hold myself accountable to being as data-driven as possible. So whenever Alexa asks me, what does our pipeline look like this week, this month, I should be able to tell her without having to scramble and go look at a dashboard. Mm-hmm. I should just always be on top of that. So that's one major shift that I've made. The other shift is we spent so much time building content in the first year, just quite honestly, without thinking about the distribution of that content. We built content from our heart and soul. We were just so excited to share these stories and write about these topics. There was really no data behind why we wrote about a specific topic. That's definitely shifting. We can't just spin our wheels creating content because we love to create content. We have to hold ourselves accountable to thinking about the distribution of that content, what value that content has towards hitting our pipeline generation goals. I really like using Emily Kramer's GAC framework. So goals, audience, channels, creative. And every marketer should be reading Emily's stuff because it's the best. But using that framework and really holding ourselves accountable to writing that first, writing out the goals, the audience, the channels, the creative first, before we go and build the content and, expend all of these resources, and maybe nobody reads it, which would be a real bummer.
I love that. And also shout out to Emily Kramer. So for folks listening, go to mkt1.co.co. 100% agree. Love the content. I haven't seen too many people speaking about marketing the same way that she does. So definitely go check her out for those listening. For your shift from more of like the brand and category creation and hype to now more of the like pipeline generation, seems like a different type of role. Like, how are you finding that transitioning? Is it challenging? Like, what are you finding like challenging or enjoyable about it?
Yeah. We talked about my background as a product marketer at the beginning here. When I think about my skills as a marketer, I definitely think product marketing, go-to-market strategy, content creation. Those are all where I feel like a superstar. And quite honestly, when we get more into the technical aspects of marketing, building a demand gen engine, those types of things are a little scary to me. And so it's been uncomfortable at times it's definitely been challenging at times. But part of why I love being in a startup is you get these opportunities, and I'm learning a ton. And I truly believe that you should, as a startup, whatever department you're in, if you're a leader in a startup, you should not hire people into roles until you've done that job a little bit yourself. And so for the last 6 months, I've been kind of putting on my demand gen hat, something I'm not super comfortable with, and really trying to figure it out myself, leaning on some contractors and some freelancers, but really trying to own the strategy. I'm lucky enough that we just hired an amazing demand gen lead to the team literally this week.
Amazing.
So I get to hand that over, but you really need to put yourself in that person's shoes and get yourself to an MVP of what that role should look like and an MVP of what the strategy should be before you hire someone in. That's just how I think about it. And maybe it's not you, maybe it's you're leaning on contractors and they're doing more of the execution, but certainly you need to really try the strategy and validate it before you go and hire someone into that seat.
Yeah, I'm on the same page as you. I think after going to business on my own with my co-founders, had to learn a lot about what works and what doesn't, particularly in sales. I'm not naturally like a salesperson. I had to learn that skill really quickly. And now we're starting a process of like, all right, I think we're decent enough at this and we know the process enough to now start hiring someone to help with it.
Yeah.
And it's relieving because we can like kind of take our foot off the gas a little bit. But on the other hand, there's maybe some nerves of like, oh, I hope we figured out enough to give this person to like chew on and like figure out versus maybe it being too soon. And I feel like there's never really a right answer of when to do it. It's just a feeling, I suppose.
Yeah. The transition from founder-led sales to hiring salespeople, I think, is one of the most challenging. We've been fortunate to add a few great AEs recently to our team, and Alexa's, starting to hand over that mantle, but I think it's uncomfortable for her too. And so I'm sure you both could exchange notes on that.
Yeah, I'm going to need some maybe some coaching or therapy to like let go of stuff.
Bit of both.
So I know we're coming up on time here. So I got some maybe rapid fire closing questions and then we'll call it.
Cool.
All right. What's one opinion you have about business you think people would disagree with?
This was a tough one when I was reading through these, because you did share these rapid fire questions with me. I don't know if this is a hot enough take about business, but I think that if you're early in your career, there's nothing more valuable than going and working for an early stage startup and really learning how to build things. And I genuinely think that everyone should learn how to build things 0 to 1 to be, I think, good at their jobs. So maybe that shot's fired at a bunch of people who built their careers in corporate. But I just think that you're never going to learn as quickly or as much as when you have to do stuff. You can't just pontificate on strategy. You have to do things and build things.
Yeah, I think that is a pretty hot take because there is a camp of folks who believe if you're at a big company with resources and a structure, like a support structure to learn from and all that stuff, that you can learn better. But I actually think maybe this is the wrong word. I think it's a little too much coddling versus if you're at a startup, you just get thrown into the fire and you figure it out. And
yeah,
you might hate it for a little bit, but in a few years when you look back on that experience, at least from my experience, like it's probably when you learn the most because you were forced to.
Yeah. And I'm not advocating that it's the right move for everybody. I think it depends on what your goals are. But I just think, especially if you're young, what do you have to lose? Go do it. Just go try it.
Yes.
If the startup fails, it fails, but you'll learn so much in the process.
Yeah, that's the call to action. And I'm extrapolating a little bit here, but I know folks also go to bigger companies for like more security, job security, quote. But we're seeing right now that that's a false sense of security, my friends.
Sense of security for sure, especially in a down market. So maybe this advice is very specific to a down market as well. It's go and work on something cool, go build something cool, if you have the privilege to do so, because it definitely is a privilege.
Yeah. All right. Maybe this is the same answer, but what's one impactful piece of advice that you've been given?
Doing things, learning how to do things.
Do things.
Yeah, do things. Literally as simple as that. Do things. No, but another piece of advice I've gotten that's been super impactful is surrounding yourself with like a board of advisors, like a personal board of advisors. I think has been a real level up in my career, just being able to surround myself with amazing mentors and advisors. Honestly, in the last 2 years being at Pocus, Alexa has been incredible at introducing me to folks from her network, folks that she gets introduced through, investor conversations, customer conversations. Anytime she meets a cool head of marketing, I get an intro. And it's been incredible to learn from my peers as well as learn from folks who are a little more seasoned. So I think, especially for folks that are earlier in their career, finding really amazing advisors, mentors, and folks that don't necessarily, they don't have to be 10 years your senior, but even just finding peers who are doing things that are interesting in your space can be super helpful. And it's certainly been, I think, one of the secret sauces behind my career.
Yeah. Did you proactively ask for those intros, or were they just kind of sent your way of like, hey, you should talk to this person?
Bit of both.
Okay.
I think sometimes Alexa and others will just intro me to folks. Sometimes I will see that she's connected with someone I really admire for various reasons and proactively ask for that intro. I definitely could be doing more of the proactive outreach. So that's one thing that I'm working on is being a little more aggressive with outbounding to potential advisors and mentors. So that's definitely something if you're early on in your career and you don't have an Alexa, I think going on LinkedIn, joining communities and doing that research and then, outbounding to these folks, you'd be surprised. People are really receptive. Also, my DMs are open if anyone wants to slide into them. I'm always super happy to have a coffee chat and talk shop.
I love it. Yeah, I asked because when you brought that up, I realized I could probably be doing a better job of introing my team to smart people that I'm speaking to, like yourself. So definitely going to be taking some action on that advice.
One cool thing someone did recently was ask me to come and do like a very informal lunch and learn with their marketing team. And I thought that was a great idea. And I'm actually going to steal that and do that with my team now. I'm going to invite some folks and just do like a little lunch and learn. And then that way you get your whole team involved in the kind of pursuit of learning.
Mm-hmm. All right. What's one book you'd recommend more people read?
The CEO Within. A lot of it is, if you've been in a leadership role in a startup, especially, a lot of the advice can feel maybe obvious or redundant, but I think it's so impactful to kind of see it just laid out in a clear strategy of how you can run your team more effectively, build your business more effectively. I thought it was, and it's just such an easy read that you can probably do it in a day. And especially if you work at a startup, I think it's important for anyone in a startup, anyone in a leadership role at a startup, you should read The CEO Within.
Yeah, I think I got that recommendation from Alexa as well. I picked it up and every page is just like actionable. I'm like, oh my goodness, like I'm never going to get through this because I'm just taking down all these notes of things, like making checklists of things I need to do based off that book.
Yeah, it's like the least fluffy business book I've ever read. It's just all facts, all to the point, no long pontificating storytelling, which sometimes you love and then sometimes you're like, just give me the goods. I don't want to sit through this useless story.
Yeah, most business books could be a blog post, but this one felt like, okay, they condensed this as much as they possibly could. Yeah. And that's why I enjoy it so much.
Exactly.
All right. Where can people find you on the internet?
Yeah, well, I'm on LinkedIn, so find me on LinkedIn. Not really using Twitter, but I do have Twitter at Sandy Mangat 1. And but mainly find us at Pocus.com and at Get Pocus on Twitter and Pocus on LinkedIn.
Love it. All right, Sandy, it was a pleasure to have you on a show. Thanks for making the time.
Thanks, David. This was super fun.